Hello, my name is Ryan from Buster Beagle 3D, and today I'll be reviewing the Bambu LAB A1 with the color-changing AMS Lite. Now, if you saw my last Bambu Labs review of the A1 Mini, I basically said I had no need for printing in different colors, but that was before I printed this, and these, and this. Yes, this is a full 3D print, so basically I was wrong. I do like printing in color now, not to mention even without the color changer, this was still, much like its little brother the A1 Mini, the easiest, most beginner-friendly 3D printer I have ever used. Everything worked exactly how it was supposed to the first time, with pretty much zero effort on my part. Want to learn more? Well, let's get started. So first I wanted to thank Bambu Lab for providing me with this machine for my honest review. I also wanted to point out that they did not provide me with the A1 Mini for my last review. I just bought that machine and made that video, which Bambu Lab saw and offered me to try out their larger machine with the AMS Lite, which I essentially said in the last video was not something that I was interested in using since I typically don't care to print in color, which again turned out to not be true. And even if it wasn't printing in multiple colors at the same time, I still like the AMS Lite for other reasons, which I'll talk about in a little bit. I also wanted to point out that there are affiliate links in the video description that do help out the channel, but do not influence my opinion on this machine one way or the other. The A1, again, is the larger version of the A1 Mini machine that I bought first. It is a bed slinger design with a build volume of 256 by 256 by 256 millimeters. The machine comes mostly assembled, but does require some very slight assembly of attaching the gantry to the base and then the spool holder to the frame if you are not using the AMS Lite with the machine. I also have to plug in a few wires in the bottom of the machine, but since there are so many videos, including some pretty good tutorial videos from the company, I won't go over that too deep here, but just know that I was ready to power up the machine in about 10 minutes after unboxing. The A1 also comes with a set of tools and other replacement parts for the machine, so you really have everything you need to assemble and get started with the printer. So when you first turn on the machine, the printer will go through about 15 to 20 minutes of self-calibration tests to level the bed, as well as vibration compensation, motor noise cancellation, and others. Again, this is not something you really need to worry about as a beginner with 3D printing, but know that all of those things are happening to make your 3D printing experience seamless and enjoyable. I had zero issues printing any of the things that I tried to print with this machine. With very little effort on my part, this printer did an amazing job right out of the box. Other than some tweaks with the color printing with the AMS to reduce waste, that I'll talk about when I go over the AMS Lite, I really changed nothing. One of the first things I did when setting up the printer was to add my Wi-Fi and my Bambu Labs account so that I could print on this 3D printer from my phone or computer over the cloud. However, I want to be very clear that you do not need to use the cloud to print with this machine. You can also print over your own private LAN connection, as well as simply through the micro SD card slot directly in the front of the machine. There is no wired connection, however, over USB, but honestly, I really don't miss that at all. The A1 also comes with a few models on the micro SD card that was already loaded onto the machine. All you have to do is load your favorite filament into the machine and press on Print Files. You can then scroll down to the list of models already there and pick one that you want. I already have too many benchies, so I decided to print this multicolor Panda model, but before I get to that, I wanted to finish a few more items about this machine. The color screen I was just talking about is great and easy to use to navigate. It also turns to face 90 degrees from the front, which I actually love, as there have been many times I needed to orient my machines for space in a particular way, so having the option to turn that screen is great. The machine has dual Z-axis lead screws, which is one of the main design differences than the A1 Mini, which has a single tower, but the two towers is really needed for the gantry with the extra build volume. The A1 comes with a magnetic textured PEI build plate that makes removing the part super simple. Just pull it off, flex it a little bit, and you're done. The plate can be heated up to 100 degrees Celsius, and honestly, if you just wanted to wait for the bed to cool down after printing, most parts simply pop off without any effort or even removing the magnetic plate. The machine comes with an all-metal swappable Hotend with a 0.4mm stainless steel nozzle. The A1 again has auto leveling, a filament runout sensor, a tangle sensor, a low frame rate camera monitoring and recording video and time lapses. It also has recovery print resume when the power goes out. However, like I was saying before, as soon as the bed cools, your part will most likely release, so the function is really for short interruptions in power. The bottom line is it just works, and from everything I have thrown at it, it works really well. So before I get into the prints with the A1, I have to talk a little bit about the AMS Lite that I got with this machine, as all of the prints that I did were with the AMS Lite. If you saw my last video on the A1 Mini, I specifically said that I didn't really see any reason to get that, as I'm not someone who typically prints in colors, and that seemed overkill for me. However, I must admit, I'm a little bit addicted to it, and it's much better than I was giving it credit for. Just in case you're not familiar with the AMS Lite, AMS stands for Automated Material System, which is often equated with multicolor printing, but it does not have to be just for that. The AMS Lite holds 4 different spools at a time, which can range from different colors to all the same color if you like. It was super easy to assemble and simply plugs into a port in the back of the A1. This can also be used with the A1 Mini as well if you like. The spool holders on the device are made to fit spools from Bambu LAb, but you do not need to use only those spools. If the spools from your favorite filament do not fit on the AMS Lite, there's a plethora of spool holder adapters that would make it fit on the Maker Lab site. I happened to receive some of the filament from Bambu LAb, and everything I printed on the machine was their filament. It was great for a few reasons. First, the filament that I printed with worked really well. It was good quality, and I had no issues at all with it. They also come in many colors and styles, so you should be able to find the color or material type that you want. It also comes with a box with swatches in it so you can see all of the colors that are available. Also, there are pretty much the same costs of the filament I typically purchase on Amazon, so it's not like you're paying a premium price. One other just quick side note about filament, and I'm not saying Bambu Lab's filament is some exclusive and special filament, but quality filament does matter. I have seen bad prints on really good 3D printers, and because of that, some might write off those printers as subpar, but it's not always the printer, but could be the filament that's the issue. I'm not saying you have to buy the most expensive filament you can find, but put quality into your printer and get good quality out. The filament from Bambu LAB comes with one more feature that is really cool, especially when it comes to the AMS Lite, and that is that most come with an RFID chip on the filament. This means that the AMS Lite can detect the type of filament you loaded onto it. That's really handy, especially when you're coloring a model in Bambu Studio and you want to be sure you're painting the correct color onto the model. Loading the filament onto the AMS Lite is very easy. You simply need to push on the yellow button and insert the filament into the bottom. As soon as the AMS Lite detects the filament, it will automatically pull it in the machine and it'll be ready to go. A few more things about the AMS Lite that I really didn't know about was that if you didn't want to use the AMS Lite for color swaps, you can also simply use it to make sure you never run out of filament with a single color job. You can set up the system to automatically swap the filament when one spool runs out with another spool of the same color. While the RFID chip will let the machine know you have 2 colors that are the same, you don't need that chip for this feature. You can simply set the filaments to the same thing in Bambu Studio, and then when you print with Enable AMS checked, it will automatically auto-refill if you run out and have another filament of the same type ready to go. The last thing I'll say about the AMS Lite is that I felt that it really just took up too much room, but if you like, you can mount directly to the frame of the printer, so you really don't have to worry about the space it takes up, if you have the clearance above the machine. So that's enough of the explanation, but now let's see what I was able to make with this machine. Again, the first thing I printed was this Panda model that came loaded directly on the card that came with the machine. This was printed in 3 colors and turned out perfectly. It took 7.5 hours since the printer had to change colors and created that infamous poop. Now, this is the issue many will have when printing in color, and it's one of the reasons I was hesitant to use the multicolor printer. You can see that this Panda Print generated 4.7 ounces of poop or purge material. That's quite significant when you consider that the entire model was 1.6 ounces. That's almost 3 times the poop versus the actual model. Now, there are things you can do to reduce this, including profile changes and other techniques, such as more than one model at a time, since the poop would still be the same volume, but you would get 2 models instead of 1, and I will go into some of that in just a second, but the overall takeaway was the print came out very beautifully and truly was a flawless print. The next thing I wanted to print was a Garfield pumpkin for my kids' class, so I knew I wanted to print a lot of these, so again I could save filament by printing multiple models at the same time. I did that, and this model printed in 4 colors and took a total of 22 hours to complete 25 models at the same time. These models turned out very nice. They really came out great, and again, since there were even more color changes, even though it was a smaller model, it generated even more poop. The model generated 5 ounces of purge material, while the models it made was 9.6 ounces. This is a vast improvement over the Panda as far as the model to poop ratio, but keep in mind that the poop would have been the same even if I had printed 1 model, which is only 0.4 ounces. That would have meant that it would have generated 12.5 times more material than the Garfield pumpkin would have used. So again, there are ways to start to reduce this, and I've only scratched the surface on some of these techniques. And the first one is to flush the colors into the object's infill. This will purge some of that color change into the inside of the model to attempt to reduce the waste. I printed another round of the Garfield pumpkin since both my daughters wanted to give them out to their classes, and this time the purge material was only 3.6 ounces. That's a 32% reduction of waste, which wasn't bad at all. The model still turned out really nice without any noticeable change in quality. After that, I came across another technique by a member of the Maker World site named Leon Fisher Skipper, and their technique was to change the profile of the printer to perform the color change a little differently. Now, typically the color change happens by the print head moving right and then pushing against that little push tab on the gantry. What that is doing is pushing a blade right above the heat break to cut the filament so that it can be retracted. The issue is that once that is cut, there's a lot of filament past that cut that needs to be purged. What Leon Fisher Skipper's profile does is it changes the G-code to first retract the filament higher to only cut a small amount, making sure to leave the hot blob in the heat break. Then it pushes the blob back down to prevent clogs, then retracts the cut filament. When the color change comes in, now it has to purge less because the cut material is from a point closer to the nozzle. So using that technique, I attempted another version of the Panda since I had to make another one for my other daughter anyway. This time I printed it with both the technique I just mentioned, plus the purge into infill, and this time I got a model with 3.2 ounces of purge material. That's an almost 38% improvement in less purge material than before, and the model still turned out very nice. So that's also really just scratching the surface of the tricks and techniques to reduce the purge on this machine. But the key takeaway is that there are things you can do to reduce this waste, but at the end of the day, you are also left with a really cool multicolor 3D print. After those color tests, I also printed these multicolor fidget spinners because I wanted to test the accuracy of the machine. I printed these in green and black, and it took about 3.5 hours to print and turned out perfectly. The gears move freely, and even though the tolerances were pretty tight, it all printed perfectly and worked great. The next thing I printed was more of a necessity. Some of the colors of filament that I got from Bambu Lab were not in spools. The company sells some filaments in spoolless packaging to, oddly enough, save plastic waste, but they require it to be inserted into a spool blank. The company also sells these spool blanks that can be used over and over again, but I needed an extra one, so I printed it on the printer instead. Both sides of this spool took about 5 hours total, and in the end I have a really nice spool holder that I can use again and again with the filament refills. After that, I came across something that I was not aware even existed. It's called a Hue Forge and entails printing layer by layer in different colors until it builds up into a picture. I found this one on MakerWorld, and it is made from black, white, red, and yellow. Each of the 26 layers it puts down is so thin that you are able to achieve the other colors by blending those 4 colors I listed before. So to get orange, you put down a layer of red and then top that with a layer of yellow to create the final color. I was blown away with the amount of detail and colors you can get. It's hard to believe that this is a 3D print. It did take about 8.5 hours to make this model, but again, it was one of the most exciting things I've ever made on a 3D printer. It's also almost really no waste, as it's really only changing the color 6 times in those 26 layers, so the purging is almost nothing. I was so excited about this that I purchased the program used to make these so I could try one from scratch. It's not a free program, but it was so cool that I bought it so that I could make one as well. It was really cool to see what others have been able to do with this technique, so I tried it on one of my favorite pictures of my girls, and I was really happy with how it turned out. There are a few good videos online of exactly how to make these, which I'll put in the video description. Next, to keep up with the Halloween theme, I printed this pumpkin that normally could have issues with stringing because of the many different holes in the model, but it did a really great job. Not only did it print well, but it also had pieces that needed to connect to each other, and they fit perfectly. Finally, I wanted to do a large print that had no color changes, but would still be a good test for the quality on an extended job. I found this skull model, which is supposedly a medical scan of a user named TechNaps, who also touched up the model in ZBrush. It was a really nice model, and as you can see, it turned out great. This model did have quite a bit of support that I have to admit was a pain to remove, but that also might have been a good use of the AMS Lite, where I print in white with support material so that it would have been easier to remove. However, that would have increased the print time as well as producing a lot of purge material, but it's nice to know that it would have been an option if I had wanted it. Overall, I was very happy with the way the model turned out, and it's so large and detailed. It did take over 24 hours to print, but again, it was well worth it. Overall, in case you couldn't tell, I'm very happy with the 2 printers that I have gotten from this company. Both the A1 and the A1 Mini have essentially retired some of my other printers, as the quality, speed, and ease of use blow some of my other printers out of the water. Honestly, if I had anything to complain about, it would be the camera on both machines, as it's a little too low frame rate. I'm not sure why that is the case, since it seems like even my old webcams from years ago don't have such a choppy frame rate, but maybe there's a logical reason for this, but I just don't know it. Other than that, I really have nothing else that I don't like about this or the A1 Mini machine. Which one should you pick up? Well, that really depends on you and your budget, space, and what you want to print. If you have a few extra bucks and the space, then get the A1. You really won't be disappointed. I wanted to once again thank Bambu Labs for providing me with this A1 machine for my honest review. There are affiliate links in the description that do help out the channel if you use them, but again, had zero influence on what I thought of the machine. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please do click that like button, drop a comment, it really helps out the channel, and consider subscribing for more content having to do with 3D printing, laser engraving, injection molding, and all things maker. Thanks again, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.